We live in an era that pathizes any form of discomfort, where the slightest feeling of anxiety is immediately treated as a defect to be corrected, a symptom to be eliminated, a noise in the normal functioning of the mind. But what if this view is deeply misguided? What if anxiety, instead of being a problem, is actually a message? A kind of existential alarm pointing exactly to the places where the individual most needs to grow. It was Søren Kierkegaard, the 19th-century Danish philosopher, who planted the seed of this revolutionary idea. For him, anxiety, or angst as he translated in his original text, was not a psychological disorder. It was an inevitable consequence of human freedom. According to Kierkegaard, anxiety arises at the very moment when a human being faces the possibility of choosing, of changing, of becoming something different from what they are. It is not a reaction to a concrete threat like fear. It is a response to pure possibility, to what has not yet happened, but could happen. This distinction is fundamental. When a person feels fear, they react to something that is already there, a danger, a loss, an imminent pain. But anxiety, this diffuse unease, this feeling that something is at stake even without knowing exactly what, arises when the human soul senses that an opportunity for transformation is before it, a choice that carries weight, a moment where something true and irreversible can happen. And here lies the central point. This anxiety is not a mistake. It is a sign of life. Kierkegaard argues that only those who are still alive to possibilities feel angst, those who have not yet given up on becoming something more authentic. Those who no longer feel anxiety may have already resigned themselves to a predictable mechanical existence without risks and therefore without true freedom. This video starts from this breaking point with the dominant narrative of contemporary psychology. It proposes a courageous inversion not only to accept anxiety, but to understand that it can be an ally, that it contains precious information about what truly matters to you. That discomfort can be a compass pointing exactly to where growth is trying to happen. Throughout this video, we will dive deeply into Kierkegaard's philosophy and the idea that anxiety is the vertigo of freedom. We will explore why anxiety arises in the most critical moments of life, how to reinterpret your physical and emotional symptoms, and most importantly, how to transform this force, often paralyzing, into an instrument of personal power and existential fulfillment. If you frequently feel anxiety, this video is not just about an abstract concept. It is about you, about your freedom, about your unrealized potential, about what scares you. Because deep down it reveals you. To understand the hidden power within anxiety, one must return to the mind that perhaps analyzed it most deeply. Søren Kierkegaard, long before anxiety was treated as a clinical disorder, he saw it as something infinitely deeper, a symptom not of weakness but of human freedom itself. In his foundational work, The Concept of Anxiety, Kierkegaard does not describe anxiety as a mistake to be corrected, but as an inevitable sign of the human confrontation with its own potential. Kierkegaard draws an essential distinction. Fear is a reaction to something concrete, a specific threat, a visible danger, something that can be clearly identified. Anxiety, on the other hand, arises when we face possibility. It does not respond to what is, but to what could be. And this possibility, this freedom to choose and to become something different, is precisely what paralyzes us. Imagine someone about to make a decision that could change the course of their life. Leaving a relationship, moving to another country, speaking a difficult truth, starting something new. The anxiety that appears in these moments does not mean that something is wrong. On the contrary, it arises because something deeply significant is at stake. Kierkegaard calls this the vertigo of freedom, like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing that you can jump even if you won't. It is the terror of realizing that you have power, that you are responsible, that your choices create realities. This is the core of existential anxiety. It confronts us with our own capacity for choice. And the freer you are, the more anxious you may become. Not because freedom is bad, but because it demands responsibility. And that responsibility weighs heavily. Those who no longer feel anxiety may not be at peace. Perhaps they have simply stopped putting themselves in situations where something real can happen. Modern society, obsessed with comfort and anesthesia, has taught us to flee from anxiety as if it were a defect. But Kierkegaard inverts this logic. For him, anguish is a sign that we have not yet surrendered, that we are still capable of becoming something greater, that the spirit still pulses restless within us. Instead of fleeing from anxiety, Kierkegaard proposes that we learn to listen to it, that we see it as a radar pointing to the moments when life calls us to grow, like an alert saying, "This matters. Pay attention. You are on the edge of something transformative." And this leads us to the next inevitable question. What exactly is anxiety trying to show us? In the next section, we will understand why anxiety is not an obstacle, but rather a living proof that you are in touch with your true potential. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Most people see anxiety as an interruption, something that disrupts life, paralyzes decisions, and robs sleep. But Kierkegaard invites us to view it from a completely opposite perspective, as a symptom that something very right is happening. Instead of being a sign of collapse, anxiety is a compelling proof that you are facing something that has the power to transform you. Think of the moments when anxiety appears most strongly. Before a difficult conversation, before a major change, when you feel called to take a stand, to take risks, to act with authenticity. It's not a coincidence. Anxiety arises when your life comes into contact with the possibility of becoming more real. It is the internal signal that something is at stake, and that something is usually your own growth. Kierkegaard asserts that anxiety does not happen by chance. It is proportional to the magnitude of the possibility before you. The more important what is at risk, the more intense the anxiety will be. It is not the enemy, it is the indicator. You do not feel anxious about things that do not matter. No one loses sleep over an irrelevant task. But in the face of a choice that can reveal who you truly are, your body and mind go on alert. Not because something is wrong, but because everything may be about to change. This is where most people fail, because we have been conditioned to interpret this signal as something negative. We have been taught to avoid discomfort, to escape any internal tension. But what Kierkegaard shows us is that emotional discomfort is not an obstacle to be avoided, but a path to be followed. It is the living trail that points to what matters most. And there is something even deeper here. Anxiety only exists because freedom exists. An animal does not feel existential anguish. A machine does not feel doubt. Only a being that is aware of its possibilities can experience the vertigo of choice. It is precisely because you can become something greater that you feel that knot in your stomach. It is because you still have hope, because there is still an open future, that anxiety appears. In other words, feeling anxiety is a privilege of the human spirit, a proof that you have not given up. So instead of asking yourself, how do I stop feeling anxious? Perhaps the right question is, what is this anxiety trying to show me about who I could be? In the next section, we will delve even deeper into this analysis and examine how modern society, with its promises of comfort and control, has trained us to flee from the very experiences that most reveal our inner power. We will understand why fleeing from anxiety is in fact fleeing from freedom, and how this may be keeping you imprisoned in a life that is not yours. We live in a culture that venerates comfort as the supreme virtue. From an early age, we are trained to avoid anything that causes discomfort, uncertainty, or emotional tension. If something hurts, anesthetize it. If something scares you, run away. If something takes you out of control, control even more. In this world, anxiety is seen as a flaw to be corrected, not as a revelation to be listened to. The problem is that by fleeing from anxiety, we are fleeing from the very process of psychological and existential maturation. Modern society has turned life into a risk management system. Safe choices, predictable trajectories, comfort zones perpetuated by technology, entertainment, and medication. But the more we try to protect ourselves from anxiety, the more fragile we become. We become less prepared to face real life, which is made up of difficult decisions, painful breakups, and radical freedom. Anxiety in this context has come to be treated as a generalized pathology. But are all forms of anxiety really dysfunctional? Or are we diagnosing as a problem precisely what should awaken us? Caggard warns us by silencing anxiety, we also silence the call of existence, because it is precisely anxiety that alerts us to moments where something vital is at stake. When a young person feels anxiety about choosing a career, it is not because they are broken. It is because deep down they sense that the decision will shape who they will become. When someone feels anguish at the end of a relationship, it is not a system error. It is the psyche confronting the loss of a part of their world. But instead of learning to sustain this discomfort, we are taught to eliminate it as if it were a virus in the code. This is how we become emotionally anemic. We convince ourselves that the good life is a life without tension, without internal confrontation, without risk. But this is a life without soul. Because everything of value requires sacrifice, and every leap toward authenticity comes with anxiety. Its absence often is not a sign of peace, but of apathy, of conformity, of inner death. The wellness industry's superficial motivational speeches, social media, with its aesthetic of continuous happiness, all reinforce the idea that discomfort is failure. But Kierkegaard offers a powerful counter-narrative. Feeling anxious is a sign that you have not yet fallen asleep in the comfort of appearances. It is a sign that you still feel the friction between what is and what could be. It is a sign that you have not yet given up on freedom. In the next section, we will explore how anxiety can be reinterpreted, how the symptoms that scare us today can in fact be understood as signs of preparation. We will learn to read the body as an ally in the process of evolution and understand why what you feel as a threat may be the prelude to your most authentic performance. When anxiety arises, it does not present itself merely as an abstract feeling. It manifests in the body. A racing heart, sweaty hands, a tight throat, tense muscles, shortness of breath. These are symptoms that many people immediately interpret as signs that something is wrong, as if the body is collapsing. But this interpretation is in many cases completely misguided. Caggard teaches us that instead of fleeing from these sensations, we should learn to listen to them, decipher them, and more than that, reconfigure their meaning. These physical symptoms are in fact the body preparing for a moment of great importance. It is a state of activation, an energetic mobilization of the organism in the face of a situation where something significant is at stake. What you feel is not a biological failure. It is a force field being activated. The body is not trying to paralyze you. It is preparing you to perform, to act, to cross a threshold. The difference lies in how you interpret this activation. People who see anxiety as a sign of threat react with panic. They retreat, freeze, give up. But people who reinterpret this state as preparation for a leap, as the biological prerequisite for high performance, can transmute discomfort into drive. An Olympic athlete feels exactly the same symptoms before a competition. An artist before stepping on stage. A surgeon before a delicate procedure. The difference is that they have trained to understand these signals as allies, not enemies. This is the key. Anxiety can be transformed into power, but only if you change your relationship with it. The fear of the symptom is what amplifies suffering. The rejection of the experience is what generates paralysis. Caggard did not use the modern terms of neuroscience or behavioral psychology, but his message is perfectly compatible with what we know today. The meaning you give to your internal experience profoundly alters how it unfolds. When you understand that your heart is racing not because something is wrong, but because something is beginning, everything changes. Anxiety ceases to be an obstacle and becomes a green light, an activation signal, a summons. But this requires practice. It requires awareness. It requires the courage to stay within the discomfort long enough to listen to it instead of fleeing. And more, it requires a radical shift in how you perceive what it means to be prepared. Perhaps it is not total control. Perhaps it is precisely this pulsing vulnerability, this state of existential alertness that marks the exact moment when you are ready. In the next section, we will take the most important step, transforming anxiety into a compass. We will analyze how to identify your deepest triggers and convert them into clear directions for your growth. You will understand why what scares you the most may be exactly what brings you closer to your true self. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. Most people treat anxiety as a sign that they should stop, avoid, retreat. But what if it's exactly the opposite? What if anxiety is a map, a compass pointing with surgical precision to the places where your soul most needs to grow? This is one of Kagard's most revolutionary ideas and one of the most ignored by contemporary popular psychology. Kagard shows us that anxiety arises with greater intensity, precisely where there is the most potential for transformation. What makes you most anxious is rarely something irrelevant. On the contrary, anxiety ignites in the face of what is genuine, what touches your identity, what has the potential to change the course of your existence. It functions as an internal sensor, a kind of existential radar. The problem is that we have been trained not to listen. How many times have you felt anxiety when thinking about speaking a difficult truth, about exposing yourself in public, about ending a stagnant relationship, about following an authentic but risky professional calling? These moments of anxiety are points of tension between the you that you are today and the you that you could be. And the greater the distance between these two, the more intense the anguish will be. Not because you are failing, but because there is a part of you trying to be born. When you start to observe your anxiety honestly, it begins to reveal a pattern. You will notice that it appears in the same situations, in the same contexts, in the same dilemmas. This is not coincidence. These are unresolved areas of your psyche, untraversed boundaries of your personal development. And the more you avoid these zones, the louder your anxiety screams. It screams because you are ignoring what most needs to be faced. In this sense, anxiety is not just an emotional response. It is a diagnosis. It shows you where you are stuck, where you are betraying yourself, where you are living too small. And at the same time, it points exactly to what you need to do. Cross the discomfort. Speak what needs to be said. Make the postponed decision. End the completed cycle. Take the leap you fear. Kierkegaard saw this dynamic as an intrinsic part of the individuation process, the path toward authenticity. And the price of that authenticity is anxiety. Not as punishment, but as a rite of passage. The pain of being between two worlds. The old that confines you, and the new that has yet to be conquered. Therefore, what provokes you the most anxiety is often what reveals you the most. The question you should ask is not how do I get rid of this, but rather what is this anxiety trying to tell me about who I can become? The more you learn to listen to this call, the clearer the direction of your growth becomes, and the more courage you develop to walk in that direction even with fear, even with your body trembling, even without guarantees. In the next section, we will complete this journey. We will understand how mastering anxiety is not about eliminating it, but training it. We will explore how to transform this discomfort into fuel for action and why the most powerful individuals you know are not those who do not feel anxiety, but those who have learned to use it as a driving force. True mastery over anxiety does not lie in eliminating it. This is an illusion sold by a culture obsessed with comfort, productivity, and toxic positivity. Kagard shows us that eliminating anxiety would be the same as amputating freedom. It would be like erasing the signals of your own existential navigation system. The path is not to silence anxiety. Duh. It is to integrate it. It is to learn to walk with it, to listen to it without bending, to use it as energy, as direction, as vital force. Powerful people are not those who do not feel anxiety. They are those who have learned to dance with it, who can breathe amidst internal chaos, feel the body activated, the heart racing, the mind racing, and still act with clarity. They do not flee from tension. They know that this tension is the price of authenticity, that every advance in life requires an uncomfortable crossing, that living up to one's potential is not comfortable. It is intense, challenging, and yes, deeply anxious. Mastering anxiety, then, is reconfiguring its function. It is transforming the symptom into a signal. It is looking at that discomfort as a reminder. You are about to do something that matters. Every situation that makes you anxious carries a hidden lesson, an opportunity to become more true, more free, more whole. It is continuous training. With every moment you choose to act, even with anxiety, you strengthen the internal muscle of courage. You learn that anxiety does not have to paralyze you. It can prepare you. You learn that discomfort is often the portal, and that on the other side of anxiety is what you seek most. Meaning, fulfillment, power. There is no real personal evolution without anxiety. And if you feel this in your daily life, that tightness, that internal conflict, that restlessness that seems to scream inside your chest, then this is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are alive, that there is still room to grow, waiting for you to cross the discomfort and say, yes. Now tell me, what is the decision that causes you the most anxiety at this moment in your life? Write in the comments. This reflection could be the beginning of your turnaround. And if this video touched you in any way, like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel. Here we speak the truth that no one tells you, and this is just the beginning.